Hey guys, welcome to GCT, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. Today's Crazy Karen Tuesday, where we encounter Karens in the wild. Entitled kid tries sending his police officer dad after me in a ProRevenge attempt. His plan backfires. Our first story comes from the Entitled People subreddit, posted by GoldenSilver61. From the mid-90s through to early 2000s, I spent my summers working as a counsellor at a Boy Scout summer camp. I've worked in several different program areas, but this story happened when I was the director of the rifle range. Every week, we would get a new group of campers, and when they came up to the range for orientation, I would go over all the safety rules. I would finish by telling the kids, you get one warning on this range, and this is the warning. There are only 2 safe directions to point your rifle, up in the air or down range. It doesn't matter if your gun is loaded or unloaded. If you break this rule and deliberately point your rifle in any other direction, you'll be kicked off this range and not be allowed to shoot here for the rest of the week. I would go over all these rules again for the kids on the first day of the merit badge classes to satisfy the safety rule requirement for the badge. And there were plenty of posters hanging around the range with all the safety rules on them. In other words, there was no excuses to break them. One day, the scouts in my merit badge class were practicing shooting for the test they had to take at the end of the week. One scout, the entitled kid, thought it'd be funny to point his rifle at another scout and spout off some random action movie line. I ran up and snatched the rifle out of his hands and yelled, "What the hell are you doing?" The entitled kid responds, "But the gun wasn't loaded." I said, "Recite the safety rules now." The entitled kid recites them all, including the part about not pointing the gun anywhere but a safe direction. I told him to hand over his shooting ticket, tore it in half, and said he was done on my range for the rest of the week. Later that afternoon, the range was open for free shooting. Everything was going smoothly, until I noticed the entitled kid walking up the trail towards the range with his father, an assistant scoutmaster who was built like an NFL linebacker. After the round of shooting ended, I called a ceasefire and told my assistant to keep an eye on the range while I handled the situation that was about to happen. As I approached the entitled kid and his father, the entitled kid jumps up and down, pointing at me and yelled, "That's him! He's the one who tore up my ticket and kicked me off the range!" The entitled kid looks at me and yells, "You're gonna get it now! My dad's a cop, and you're gonna be sorry for what you did!" Before I could get a word out, Cop Dad gets in my face and starts chewing me out, drill sergeant style. Now, the story happened so long ago, I don't remember exactly what Cop Dad was shouting. I mostly remember the poop-eating grin the entitled kid gave me as he watched his father tear me a new one. I just stood there quietly and patiently, waiting for my turn to respond. Finally, Cop Dad says something along the lines of, "So what do you have to say for yourself?" Me, "Yes, I did tear up your son's shooting ticket and kicked him off my range, but did your son mention why I did that?" Cop Dad's face went from angry to inquisitive. He blinked in rapid succession as he said, "No, now that you mention it, he didn't tell me why." We both turned our attention to the entitled kid. His smile faded and he shrunk in our presence as he realized that his plan had just backfired. I loved giving him the same poop-eating grin that he'd given me a few minutes earlier. To the entitled kid's credit, he did tell the truth. He probably knew better than to lie to Cop Dad. And if looks could kill, the look on Cop Dad's face would have killed his son several times over. After a moment of silence, he finally said, in one of the most intimidating voices I've ever heard in my life, "Go back to camp and wait for me at your tent. I'll deal with you soon." The entitled kid left to the tune of a dead man walking. Cop Dad turned to me and apologized for getting angry and chewing me out before knowing all of the facts, to which I accepted his apology. For the rest of the week, Cop Dad would come to the range every day during open shoot my rifles, and would hang out and talk with me. Turned out, he was actually a pretty cool dude. At the end of the week, he told me that when they get home, he will finish his son's rifle shooting merit badge, and he'll make sure that his son never disrespects a firearm ever again. So, the dad listened to his kid tell him he was banned from shooting for a week, drove all the way to camp, found the range and OP, got in OP's face screaming, all without once thinking to ask why his kid got banned? Okay. To his credit, at least once he found out the reason, he didn't try to defend his son. Entitled Mum expects a complete stranger to watch her kid. Our next post comes from the BestofRedditorUpdates subreddit, posted by Pain Sonoma. So, this is a weird one. Not my story, but a friend who messaged me right after it happened to vent, cause what the hell? So, Karen moved into the apartment next to my friend's a couple weeks ago. Karen has struck up short, polite conversations with my friend just 2 times in that period, with the second being yesterday, the day before this whole fiasco unfolded. This morning, about 9 AM, while my friend was having a nice Saturday breakfast, someone started aggressively banging on her front door. When my friend answered, Karen was standing there with a 5-year-old girl who had a little backpack on. Sounding very flustered, Karen said she was sorry to have to ask this with no notice, but could my friend please watch her kid for a few hours? Because Karen had somewhere really important to be. Now, something you need to know about my friend is that she can't stand kids and has no idea how to deal with them. Like, she tenses up and gets super awkward if a kid so much as waves at her in a supermarket. My friend is also disabled. She uses a motorized wheelchair sometimes, or a walking cane for short distances, or when she's just pottering around her own home. She lives with a girlfriend who's also her carer. Her chronic illness involves fainting spells and a lot of brain fog, so by her own account, she's absolutely not someone who should be left in charge of a child. Karen has seen my friend using both her wheelchair and her cane, and has seen her girlfriend, who was at work when all this happened, helping her in and out of their car. So my friend responded with a firm no, explaining that her medical conditions meant that the child wouldn't be safe in her care, and that she's not well enough at the moment to have any guests, let alone an unattended child in her home. Karen immediately flipped from pleading and simpering to hand-on-hip indignation, accusing my friend of faking her disabilities because, of course, if she can walk at all, then she obviously doesn't need a wheelchair, right? And threatened to report her to Centrelink welfare if my friend didn't watch the kid for her. Never mind the fact that my friend isn't on welfare. Her girlfriend has a high-paying job, and my friend works somewhere between part-time and full-time hours from home. She's a goddamn machine, and I don't know how she manages it. Newsflash, not all disabled people are unable to work. Although, of course, getting employers to actually hire us is another matter, cause ableism. So my friend basically said, I'm not on Centrelink, and I don't appreciate being blackmailed. Find another babysitter, because I'm not it, and closed her door. Karen kept banging on the door for a bit, but eventually left. About 20 minutes later, my friend heard a very faint, timid tapping on her front door. She said if she hadn't been so close, she probably wouldn't have heard it. She sighed heavily, having kinda already guessed what was happening. She opened the door, and there was Karen's child, who'd clearly been crying, clutching the shoulder straps of her little backpack. She said very softly, Mummy said I could stay here today. Now, like I said, my friend cannot stand kids, but even she said that this kid was an absolute darling throughout this entire fiasco, and the most she ever did was cry, because her mother is clearly a goddamn monster. Karen had driven off and sent her child to my friend's door, clearly thinking that if she left her with no alternative, she'd just have to play along and babysit her child for her anyway, especially since my friend had literally no way of contacting Karen. Wrong. My friend had escaped abusive parents at a young age, and this stuff made her furious. She got the child settled in front of the TV with a drink and some snacks and called the police. Yeah, my neighbor just abandoned her 5-year-old daughter outside her apartment, and the kids showed up at my door, asking to come in. When the officers arrived, my friend told them the full story, and while they were appalled, she said they weren't surprised. One said, you'd be shocked about how not rare this kind of thing is. Which, honestly, is kind of the worst part of all of this. The officers took Karen's child with them and were really sweet with her, explaining that she wasn't in any kind of trouble and had done the right thing, and they were there to look after her and find out where her mummy had gone. My friend found out later they were able to contact the child's father, who's currently finalizing a divorce from Karen, and was also appalled, but not remotely surprised by what she'd done. He is hoping he gets full custody of the poor child after this. Update. I messaged my friend asking if she had any updates, and oh boy, that's an emphatic yes. This morning, she had another knock on her door, only it was the dad with Karen's child in tow. He went there to apologise for what his ex had done, and so that he and his kid could thank my friend for looking after her and for calling the police. She said he seemed like a really good guy who was clearly putting his kid first in all of this, which was really reassuring to hear. According to his lawyer, her calling the police and handling everything the way she had basically gift-wrapped the custody win for him, because what the F kind of court would ever grant Karen custody after the stunt she'd pulled? His lawyer was over the moon when the dad called him. My friend also asked the dad what the F was so important that Karen had abandoned her own daughter over it. You guys ready for this? It's so goddamn cliche. It was an appointment at the nail salon. She'd brought the kid several times previously and just demanded that the staff babysit her and refused to even acknowledge the kid during her me time. When she'd called yesterday morning to book a last-minute appointment because Karen's, the staff put their foot down and told her she could no longer bring her child to her appointments and would be refused service if she did. The dad also said that Karen had shown up so late to the appointment that they'd refused to see her anyway, again, 'cause Karen's. So she'd abandoned her daughter because she wanted her me time getting her nails done. The dad told my friend that me time is an excuse Karen uses to ignore her kid, basically anytime she feels like it. Do not talk to me during my me time, etc. The dad also asked my friend if she'd be okay to help him with his custody battle. He said he understood that her health wasn't great, and that his lawyer had said that a written statement would be fine. While it probably wasn't essential, since they had the police report, he wanted to have as much evidence on his side as possible, just to be sure. Of course, my friend agreed. Karen hasn't yet shown up at my friend's door to scream at her, so she's thinking that maybe dealing with the police put some actual fear of consequences into her. We shall see. I will, of course, post any further updates I receive. Remember, I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.